Four Rivers, Six Ranges is a period film about Tibet's resistance against the invading Chinese military forces and the rise of Chushi Gangtruk, an independent military group to fight the occupation. The film recently premiered at the International Film Festival, Rotterdam, and is set to premiere at the Julien Dubuque International Film Festival in Iowa, United States on April 24th. Shenpenn Khymsar, wearing several hats for this film, be it the director, the music director, and more, is with us today to talk all about it. Welcome to our program, Shenpenn.
Thank you very much.
So Shenpenn, I would like to begin with a question that I think is paramount to success or with anything that you do really, and that is confidence in oneself. So were you always confident, or is it something you had to build over time?
Definitely I had to work on it and build over time, but it is absolutely paramount. Confidence only comes from knowledge. It comes from learning. It comes from experience. It comes from failing. It comes from falling. So one has to be willing to go through all that. Like the diamond, you know, when it's on your finger or your neck, it's very precious and expensive, but it has to go through chisel and fire and hammer and ice. So similarly, our human life is like that. So this is how I worked on it. So it's not natural. I'm not like born confident. So over time, I developed it, yeah.
So coming to your film, Four Rivers, Six Ranges, you said your decision to film in Mustang, just about 40 kilometers away from the Nepal-Tibet border, was your way of revolting against the Chinese government. But it is a huge risk given the fact that you had about 300 people working for and with you on this project. Mm-hmm. So my question is, how do you take such huge decisions?
Well, when you make decisions like this in particular, it has to, people notice when the decision is made.
Right.
But people don't notice the prep and the precautions and the contingency plans that goes in before that, right? So I was in Nepal for, I think, about 7 months prior to shooting. So I had set up base camp in Nepal, Kathmandu, for 5 months. And then I was in Pokhara. So for 5-6 months in Nepal, Kathmandu, we were prepping. And I think, you know, through the exhibition, the exemplary exhibition of a true leader, Goti, is tested in moments like this, when you're faced with challenges and trials and tribulations. So my greatest confidence, apart from preparing and apart from being cautious, was that I was doing the right thing. You know, it takes an army to make a film. So the trust everybody had. And it was a great opportunity for me to lead everybody with positive leadership, you know. And so this is how I get my confidence. But I actually, to be honest, I mean, I'm speaking all this, but I at the same time, I really don't know how I'm able to do all this. I don't. I just do it.
So just in case Mustang doesn't work out for some reason, do you had a plan B?
Yeah.
Of vacation or anything like that?
Yeah. Plan B was Ladakh.
Oh, so you had the permission and everything sorted for
Yeah.
Ladakh?
So Ladakh is relatively easy, and it's a lot more movie friendly because a lot of films are shot there.
So your film is in English, catering to the non-Tibetans at large. What role do you think does the film play amidst the ongoing current situation of Tibet, China, and the worsening condition of human rights in Tibet? What political message do you think the film carries?
Well, I mean, I think, I don't think it's rocket science. You know, the political message is very obvious. Tibet always belonged to Tibetans.
Right.
Tibet was never a part of China. And then the Four Rivers, Six Ranges, Chushi Gangtruk, the story is not a propaganda, right? If you look at the Chinese, their narrative has always been consistent, even though we disagree, but they're consistent with their narrative. Similarly, we are not the perpetrators. We are not the oppressors. We are the oppressed. So if there is any moral ground, we have every damn right to say, you know, that this was ours, this is ours, it belongs to us. But I feel, even as a Buddhist, I feel it should be our moral responsibility to tell the stories of these warriors, of these people, our ancestors. They're Tibetans. Forget about regionalism. They are Tibetans. Gomputashi Andutsang, when he formed Chushi Gangtruk, he didn't form and he didn't decide to fight for Lithang. He decided to fight for Tibet. They fought for His Holiness. They fought for Tibetans. So when I fight today in my own ways, I am fighting for Tibetans, inside Tibet and outside Tibet. I'm making this film for all Tibetans, you know. So there is no political ambition or angle, but it is political.
So as a director of this film, as a Tibetan, what do you hope the younger generation of our people take away, and what do you hope the non-Tibetans to take away from this film?
Takeaway, I mean, I think I genuinely hope that the younger Tibetans will look at this film and look at me and look at my actors and look at my team and say, if they can do it, we can do it too. So that is my hope, not my message, for the younger. Now the international audience, I want them to be educated about Tibet. And I also don't want to sustain the false imagery of Tibetans. I don't want the world to think that we are all like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. It is very dangerous. I want the world to think that we are like everybody else. We are human beings. We have afflictions, we have problems, we have failures, we have, you know, bad things. We have all kinds of people, you know, but we've also resisted in this case. We have fought back. Our Tibetan warriors, these brave souls, they fought with all their might. You talk about bravery and you talk about courage and tenacity. They had that. They were very small in number, but their courage was magnanimous, and they deserve to be heard. Their stories deserve to be heard by the international world. So, yeah.
Talking about our people at the younger generation and inspiration, the actors in your film are mostly first-time Tibetan actors. So how do you think we can encourage the younger generation of our people to dream big?
Well, I think we have to allow people to dream first, because everybody has a dream. But most of us, we succumb to the norms of society. We succumb to the indoctrinations of society, and then we fall prey to this cyclical system, and then we give up ourselves, and then we become a part of the machinery. We become a part of the herd. It is important for our children to be allowed to dream, and their dreams can be their dreams. It should not be the imposition of the parents. So when you dream, then you become imaginary. Your imagination gets activated. Neurologically too, you become very, you know, you will have no borders, no limits, no sanzam for your thoughts and your dreams and your imagination. If we don't imagine, if we don't dream, how can we innovate? How can we create?
When you dream big and then you start working towards your goals, it comes with a lot of challenges.
Of course.
So speaking from your experience, how do you walk past those challenges?
See, in life, I think, you know, in my case, I have constantly been learning and unlearning. I didn't know many things that I know today, 5 years ago or 10 years ago. But I also know today that there's still a lot of things I don't know. So I think it is important to keep ourselves up to date. You have to read. You have to read books. You have to be interested in history, in politics, in anthropology, in literature, in poetry, in art, in music, in cinema. You know, I've done the corporate job, you know, a banker. I've been a human rights activist for so long. But everything I've done, I've learned so many things about the world, about life, but most importantly, I have learned so much about myself, my own flaws, my own shortcomings, my own defects, my own, you know, mistakes. I always tell people, if you work on your individual identity and you make your individual identity strong, then you can protect the community's identity.
Okay, so moving slightly to the technical part of filmmaking, it is natural for filmmakers to get attached to the amount of content they film. So how are you able to let go of footage that might look amazing but doesn't fit to the narrative or the storyline?
Well, it happens with every film that I make or anyone makes. And whatever you just said is so true. And this is also, again, your opportunity to practice maturity, your opportunity to practice Buddhism in our case. Because in my film, Four Rivers, Six Ranges, there are so many scenes or shots that I took and that I have, and we saw on the edit table that didn't make it to the final cut. You know, it didn't make it in the final picture. And you're automatically so attached to that one because it looks amazing. But we also have to, especially as directors, I have to learn, make sure that I look at it holistically. It has to, whatever, you know, a shot or how many ever frames there is, and it's beautiful and I love it. But if it's not making sense with the previous shot and the shot after, if it's not connecting, then it can throw off the whole scene.
So for my final question, as promising as the film is, what kind of future do you see for the film? And what are your expectations as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, and as a Tibetan?
Wow, that's one fully loaded question. I think the future of the film, I'm going to try my best as much as I can to get this film out there. But at the end of the day, I'm only one person, and I'm only just a very like a ordinary artist. So I will do whatever I can. But the film has its own karma. I believe that. So I cannot tell you the future of the film, but this film was made for a reason. And I'm speaking very like spiritually now. This film was made by a reason, for a reason, and I don't mean to say by me. It has nothing to do with me. I feel like I was just a medium, madhyam, you know? This film, the warriors had to tell their story, and I became that channel. So I think this film it'll have an amazing life, I think, and it'll stay. And it is also, cinematically, it's also the first Tibetan like war movie ever made. So there's already a history attached now. It's a historical, you know, to make this film itself is creating history. And all of us, me and my entire team, we have been fortunate enough, as difficult as it was, to be able to make this film. And I believe that this film will have its deserving future, whatever it deserves. We put in so much work. I have put in my heart and soul. I've sacrificed my life to do this film, so it cannot go in vain. I have that much faith. Now, as a Tibetan, I'm going to continue making films, and I'm going to continue telling our Tibetan stories, you know, from the past, present. But right now, for at least another 6 years or so, my films will be mostly period films, mostly dealing with older Tibetan stories. And like my next film, you know, is from the 15th century to 17th century Tibet, you know. So yeah, I'm just going to keep making films. I'm just going to keep learning. And it's exciting to be able to create something out of nothing, you know. So I'm very blessed. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shimbila, for your time here. We wish you the best with not just this film, but with every project that you will lead in the future.
Thank you, Karinche. Thank you.
The film is set for the audience to watch on the occasion of His Holiness the Dalai Lama's 90th birthday in July in Dharamsala. For people elsewhere, there will be updates on their official social media page. Thank you for joining us. I will see you in the next episode of In Conversation with Tibet TV.